Good afternoon, brothers and sisters. It's a privilege to serve and to be here with you to share what the Lord has asked me to prepare for you. This presentation, my wife and I have been giving it for over 20 years. It's a pity she's not here today because she's doing the same thing at our church today and tomorrow, because we have invited the community to share with them on some of these issues of personal financial management. As you will see, I have just made acknowledgements of Edward G. Reed and Larry Bucket. That is the source of information for most of my presentation, but most of the things are things that we have learned, we have researched, and as you will see, this is the table of contents. What I'm going to be sharing with you today will cover the basic principles of personal financial management, and we'll look into realities today. What is happening today that tends to get people into debts? And then, of course, we'll look at the challenges South Africa is facing today, the things that should make you think twice if you want to commit into debt. And then we'll talk about debt crucibles, the jargons we are bombarded with. We'll go into budgeting and talk about how to get out of debt. And then we'll talk about principles of borrowing and those other things. If we have time, we will address them. Now, this is the critical point of stewardship, because your faithfulness to God determines your level of stewardship. And one of those things that we need to understand as people, as believers, or even non-believers, we need to understand that the first thing is that God is the owner of everything. As you sit here, you've got nothing. You own nothing. God has never lost anything that He has created. The only thing that God ever lost is you and I when we fell into sin. And that is why God is now looking for this wayward man to reconcile himself with Him through Jesus Christ. Now, He says, if you look at Genesis 1 verse 1, when God said, let there be, where was Adam? He was nowhere when God created everything. He says, I own everything. Everything is mine, and those who dwell on this planet, I own them. That's what God says. And He says, if I were hungry, I wouldn't tell you, because the world is mine. That's what God says. The second principle is that our purpose in life is to glorify God. He created us for Himself. He says in the book of Isaiah, these people I have created to proclaim my praise. That's what God says. And then when you go to Colossians 1 verse 6, He says, everything that I have created, I've created, it was created by who? By myself. For who? For myself. God created everything for Himself. These are the basic principles that we need to understand, so that we don't go about fooling ourselves that we own things, when the first man who owned the whole world is no more. And what he thought he owned, now you claim you own. Now let's look at the next one. Tithe is the minimum testimony of our Christian commitment. If you own nothing and everything belongs to God, and yet He has given things for your custodian to manage, how effective can you do that if you don't go by His rules? If your marriage needs to be successful and you believe your marriage comes from Him, how then do you believe it will be successful if it is not based on His word? If you have kids, if you have assets that God has entrusted you with, how can you be able to manage that without the owner's recipe, rules, and regulations? So with our tithes and offerings, we declare our commitment to God. We say, Lord, I thank you for what you have blessed me with. It is a testimony that we adore and accept God as the creator and the owner of everything. And we acknowledge that here we came with nothing and we shall leave with nothing. That's what it says. And then debt is bad. You know, Ellen White said, avoid it as you would avoid smallpox, because she knew during her time, smallpox was AIDS of today. Now, prosperity is having what you need when you need it. Now, just going back to the debt issue, the Bible says the borrower is the slave of the lender. In the book of Philippians, Apostle Paul says, I have learned to be content with whatever I have under all circumstances. That's what he says. And the book of Hebrews says, you know, stop this love of money, because I have said, never will I leave you or forsake you. Let's move on to some of the things that are just facts. Edward G. Reed says, you know, 90% of family breakups are as a result of financial issues. Divorces, separations are because of what? Money, possessions, and those issues. 40% of families overspend every month. Somebody earns 10,000 rand, but he spends 12 or 15. Where is 2 coming from? Or the 5? The answer in most cases is machonisa. 40% overspend, and they spend on interest. In other words, this actually is very little. You'll see other statistics tend to say 80% of people's earnings go and pay interest because of the debts they have. The problem is not that we do not have money sometimes. It is how we manage what God has given us. We fail to manage what God has given us. Very few families have a family budget. A man and his wife, everybody does his own thing. They never plan together. They never do things together. And as you will see, there are surprises in such marriages, because you discover things that the other has been doing that you have never taken cognizance of because of your ignorance. Now, this is fact of life. Scripture refers to 1,600 times to money and possessions. 2/3 of Jesus' parables are on what? Money issues, possessions. Because, you know, we tend to chase these things, which God said, don't chase them. Look for me, find me. When you find me and my righteousness, I do what? I add all these things. But we twist things around. And that is why he says, what will it profit you if you get all these things you are chasing and you lose your own soul? There is so much love of money. There is absolutely nothing wrong with money. It is how we love this money, how we use it, because we have made it so important that it comes first instead of God. Now here, the love of money, the desire of wealth, is a golden chain that binds people to Satan, that steps to Christ. And yet we tend to forget that God has desired that we should be well off. We should be prosperous. A text was read this morning from the book of Jeremiah, because, you know, God has got this desire for us to succeed, and he has put it there. So let us not cry poverty, because God wants us to be successful in our lives. But we have to be careful, because there is a tendency of men to accumulate and be greedy. And that is why the text says, watch out, be on the guard against all kinds of greed. Because economics told me that man will never satisfy wants, because wants are unlimited and they keep on coming back. And here's another one, which says, those who want to get rich fall into what? Temptations and trap. And we see them, we read about them, even politicians who want to be, they can even sell the whole country because they want to be what? They want to be rich. That's the problem we have. So we have to be careful about the issue of money. People will do anything, and sell you out for money. Let's look at some observations today. What's happening today? Now, we find that the total debt consumer book is 1.6 trillion rand. That is those bonds you owe and all sorts of money we owe from the banks. But the one which is unsecured, this one has got no security to it. It's 165 billion rand. Okay? What do we see? We see flourishing bankruptcy, repossessions of cars, repossessions of homes, simply because people have failed to plan. It is happening even now that banks sometimes cannot even repossess these things. They have no more warehouses for cars because the warehouses are full of repossessed cars. They will tell you, stay a little bit longer in your house before we auction it, because the houses that have been repossessed are being vandalized. But the main point I want you to know is that people are getting into trouble because of debt. And when you are in debt, your marriage will start get shaky. You'll start fighting, you'll start being irritable, and all sorts of things will start happening. Now, 18.6 million South Africans have credit agreements, so they have debts. 47.2 are in arrears. These are the ones who cannot pay everything every month. They pay this month, but this they cannot afford to pay. They will pay it next month. And then about 7,000 apply for debt review per month. 7,000. These are the people who say, I can't cope anymore. I need some help. We have given people some opportunities of employment, like debt counselors. We have created a profession in South Africa of debt counselors. People are making money out of people who are in debts. All right? Now, I said earlier on that this is what was reported a while ago. 75% household income service debt. You earn 10,000 rand, 7,500 goes to service debt. Only 2,500 remains. Now, these are the kind of problems we have. Interest rates are going up. You know, this is the kind of life we see in South Africa. And then we have also this thing that has become common. The bonds that are 20 or 30 years. So you will realize later on that if you take a 30-year mortgage bond, it means you are going to buy that house 3 times. And I'll demonstrate that to you. How many of our Seventh-day Adventists or Christians are into these get-rich-quick schemes? And these are illegal. Pyramid schemes. If it's too good, then it is not good for you. You should just stay away from it. We call ourselves different, peculiar people, chosen people. And yet we behave like the what? The world. We get into these things. Where is that money you are getting in a month's time? Where does it come from? Credit is no longer a shame in South Africa. People have multiple credit cards. Even grocery stores are giving credit cards today. You can imagine if you buy bread, which could be, let's say, 12 rand on credit, and you pay it in 6 months. How much is that bread? Microlenders have mushroomed in our country. There's a peer pressure, and you'll see there's a research that has indicated that black people are concerned about how they look, what they drive. Identity crisis, we have that. And on top of that, we have black tax. We buy expensive cars. We use what we call balloons. Bankers are happy to see you using a balloon. You know, a balloon is one thing that makes you a very good impressionist. You drive what you can afford. You can't afford it. The minute you go to balloon, you must know you don't afford that car. It's simple. And I'm sorry to offend some of you. You don't afford it. It's beyond you. And now the banks are smart. Financial institutions are smart. How do we make these people to look good? Impressionists. Give them a balloon. Now, let me share with you some of the challenges that South Africa is facing. I'm not trying here to be a politician. And I'm saying, when we look at the political situations of this country, which affect the economic situation, we as Christians have to be so careful in our spending, in our getting into debt. Is this the time to be considering getting into debt when the economic situation and the political situation is as is? So think again if you were going to buy something on credit because things are not looking good. And from the business perspective, things are not right. And you will see as I go through this. First of all, we know that the GDP is very, very low, the growth. We have a contraction. In other words, there is no growth. And you'll see later in the other slide where I give you a little bit of detail. We have a volatile currency. We have already been declared junk. And I believe Moody yesterday declared us so. And I'm going to give you the implications of that, just highlights of that. Now, the government debt is 2 trillion. If the government debt is 2 trillion and we are junk, the money which the government borrows is going to be costly because they will borrow only on condition you pay high interest rates. You know, if you are a suspicious person who is likely not to pay, the interest rate is high. And if government is going to pay high interest rates, well, the population of that government will have to foot the bill with high interest rates. Your bond is going to cost you more. All right? Now, food are soaring, municipal rates, July comes, everything is going to be going up. Nothing is going to be cheaper. Inflation push, sugar tax is coming, whether you like it or not. Now, when we look at the political climate since the municipal election, we have seen what happened, the reshuffling, we know what happened, and all these things, the government, the ANC, is more polarized than ever before, divided. And now business people who want to come and invest here are asking themselves, what's going on there? Is it the place where I would put my money now? They say, let's wait and see. I would rather go to India where things are stable. And if foreign investors are not coming here because of this uncertainty and instability, it means jobs are not created. If jobs are not created, jobs may be lost. And if jobs are lost, you and I may be in the street. Now, should you be considering to get into debt when issues of life are like these? Now, these are some of the things I'm just sharing with you that you should take these things very seriously. Because business people take them seriously. They are not investing, as you will see later on in the next slide. You know, it creates so much uncertainty and speculations. And these speculations tell the businessman, wait. Rather go somewhere else to invest money than here. And as you can see, this is what we got this week. You know, GDP receded, annualized 0.7%. Last year we grew 0.3%. Now, this is what is scary. There is a risk that these contractions are not over and we could see another negative coming out in the second quarter. So we are not going to grow as South Africa in terms of GDP. It's not expected to grow. The rand has lost 1.4% to the dollar. Except for agriculture and mining, all industries have contracted. They have never grown. And if they didn't grow and they've contracted, it means some people have lost some jobs. Unemployment rose to a 14th year high in the first quarter. The business confidence remains near the lowest level in more than 2 decades. This is 2 days ago, as you can see. That's how business looks at things. Now, what are you intending to do? To get into debt? This time, think again. When things are like this. Because the junk status means more South Africans will pay more on interest. Food and electricity and prices will go up. Unemployment will increase. This comes from government, as you can see. These are the implications of junk status. Government will be forced to spend less on social programs. You know, I'm supposed to apply for a SASSA card next month when I turn 60. But I don't know whether I'll be allowed to apply for that because government grants maybe in future are likely to be what? Less. Because remember, we pay the taxes. And from the taxes we pay, the government give grants to the pensioners, to all the sorts of grants we get. Now, if there is less income that the government can get, it will start compromising what the beneficiaries of SASSA should get. Now, let's look at these debt crucibles. Debt is slavery. I've said that before. God says, remain what? Debt-free. The Quran says, a debt is humiliation by day and a worry by night. Debt is the only thing that will lead you to bankruptcy. If you don't have debt, you'll never be bankrupt. Yes. But it's only through debts that you'll become bankrupt. It's easy to get, but it's not easy to get rid of. And it's so insidious. It creeps in so slowly. Sooner or later, it's this big. That is what debt does. It's a self-inflicted tragedy and woe. So we have to be so cautious about death. I've mentioned that issue of Ellen White when she said, avoid it as you would smallpox. It affects relationships at home. Our marriage will be ups and downs because when the spouse asks about money, there'll be irritations, irritability. You know, it's stress at work, it's stress at home, performance is affected, and the next thing you may even lose your job. Because debt is bad. People have lost their lives because of debts. You remember this guy who organized suicide, that they should shoot him because he was so much in debt, this white chap, and he wanted to be killed. And then somebody tried, and I believe the first time the gun jammed, but the second time it worked. People commit suicide because they're in debt. They just can't face reality. So let us be careful about debts. Now let's look at the middle class in South Africa. This came out also last month. Debt destroys middle class. That was the highlight of this research. 73% of the middle class experience financial stress. You know, they said they were stressed all the time because that's what debts do to you. And stress is not good. And what is it that is bringing them this stress? It's short-term obligations, credit cards, and personal loans. And on top of that, we have black tax because we have extended families. And some of us play big as if we have money when we don't. We try to please even families we know we cannot even afford to. Now, when it carries on this research, it says 95% of these people had post-matric qualification. 80% of them had diploma, degree. And we're talking about people who are educated here. Some have masters, doctorates, and they earn around 300,000 rand per annum. They are in debts. So it is a fact that it is not only an issue of how much you earn, it's how you manage it. Now, here is something which disturbed me, the last point. Research from UCT's Graduate School of Business suggests that when it comes to generational shifts, particularly in the black population, conspicuous consumption is a means of demonstrating competence. What I drive, the way I look, tends to determine who I am. That's the problem we have. Now, what are the implications? The implications are some people will not have enough money for retirement. So as they retire, they don't have enough money. Some retire and still work after retirement. That's the problem we are facing now. So somebody said, this really should have been called a disease, an epidemic, if it was a disease. Because 70% of South Africans are having this flu of deaths. And as you can see, it's not an old research. It's 2017. That's what we are told. Now, this is your problem and my problem, as Ellen White looks at it. Christians seek to build as worldlings, to dress as worldlings, to imitate customs and practices of who? Of those who worship only the God of this world. We want to be like them. There is no difference between us and them. We behave like them. And yet we say we are peculiar people. We are the chosen people. Yet we live just like them. We go into debt just like them. Now, here we are told, this text we read before, that keep your lives free from the love of money and be content with whatever you have. I find it difficult sometimes. People say, but everybody wants money. But there is absolutely nothing wrong with money. It is when we love money above God. That's where the problem is. Because that's where we can even sell everybody, even the country. Because we do what? We love money more than God. Shepherds are the role models, not by choice, but by default. Now, we as Christians, we have been chosen to lead in this world so that when people look at us, they should look at role models of financial management, planning, and all sorts of things in terms of our marriages, in terms of our conduct. They must say, we want to be like those people when they look at us. But they mustn't say, whoo, look at those guys. They are no different from us. Where do you come from? You are a Seventh-day Adventist? Oh, no, I know. You are not different from us. It's like a friend of mine from Angola. He told me that, Makhup, I can see you South Africans, you are celebrating independence. But as far as I know, you are Africans. Sooner or later, you'll be like us. And he told me in 2008, and that's what's happening now. Signs of problems with debts. You'll see somebody using more and more income to settle debts. When your income goes to that, then you know there's something wrong. You are paying the minimum on your credit card because the credit card needs to be paid off at the end of the month. All of it. Not part of it. All of it. Money used to pay things not planned for. Bills are paid late. People avoid opening envelope statements. They just know, it's a problem. You talk about money, people are irritable. Yeah, you don't know what to talk about. Why do you talk about money? Is this the only thing we can talk about? We don't pay. When we are sick, we don't even go to the doctor. We just say, no, our bodies, God made them to fight these things. I'll be okay. And yet it's the question of affordability. One uses 2 credit cards. One pays the other. We use overdrafts. I was coaching a young lady, professional, HR manager, who's got a credit card or overdraft. She uses it to go and travel with friends wherever they go. She says, no, I can't stay behind. I must go with them. I said, but you can't afford it. But thank God she has dropped all those things now. And now you start consolidating your debts into what? Into one thing called, sometimes even in your bond. I know, put your car in the bond because you can't afford it. You are going to pay that car for 30 years. How many times are you paying that car? That's what's happening. But it looks easier now to pay. You worry about money once every day, and you have no spare or no cash. Those are some of the things we have noticed when people are beginning to have trouble with money. How long should we have debts? We have only guidelines from the Bible, because during those days of Israel, debts were written off after 7 years. But if you think in he's going to say, in 7 years, I'll write off your bond, you are dreaming. There is no bank that is going to write off your loan in 7 years. So debts were written off in 7 years. And when we look at today, the cars we buy are just as much as the houses cost, and yet we pay them off in 5 and 6 years. So why can't you then pay off your bond at most in 7 years? What does it mean to have a 30-year mortgage bond? It means you buy your house 3 times. And I'm going to demonstrate this to you, courtesy of Edward G. Reed. Make your loan as short as possible. That's what you must do. And this is the jargon you'll come across. An SMS will say, come and get discount vouchers for 1,000 rand. If you do what? If you open an account. In other words, if you get into what? Debts. And then they'll say, buy now, pay later. Fly now, pay later. But you are going to pay. They just want to get you into debt now. And once you are in, they know they got you, you'll never get out. We spoke about this balloon. And here's another one. Come and take this car. You drive it now, for the next 3 months, you pay nothing. Have you seen those adverts? Yes. Yeah. People fall into those. And then the first 3 months, you feel nothing. Thereafter, you sweat like hell. You pay the minimum 10% every month for your credit cards. These are the way of financial institutions to attract you, to get you into debt. So be careful. Watch these things. Call centers will call you. They want to give you a cell phone and you have one. They say, no, this one is a better package. But I have one already. What is it that you want to give me? Now people have 3, 4 cell phones. Here Larry says, because the rich rules over the poor, as the Bible says. The lender is given implied authority from God, according to the Bible. So in other words, if you don't pay, you are committing sin. Because you have committed. You went to somebody and bothered him. Bro, sister, can you please lend me money? I will repay you this way and that way. When you start ducking and diving, you are committing sin. Because you are breaking your oath and your promise that you will pay. This poor person took you on your word. That is why there have been debtors' prisons in the past for people like you who do not pay. Borrowing is permitted, but it must be affordable, and please make it as short as possible. Now, I'm going to go quickly now. Budgeting is very important. It gives direction of the family. It places control and discipline. It shows a little bit of professionalism. It instills discipline. You take responsibility. And one thing which is very important is that, ladies, don't just let the man drive things. Drive things together. A couple I'm coaching discovered that the woman has got 70,000 debt overdraft when the man had 30. Now they had 100. And they have other debts. They never knew because they never planned together. The other lady discovered that the husband has not been paying the bond and now is being repossessed. So do things together. Don't let things sleep. Here is a guideline of a budget. Please, if you are spending on the house around 40%, that's good. But beyond that, you may be compromising other things. If you are spending more than 20% on the car, it means you are compromising on other things of the family. All right? Now, how do we go about eliminating debts? Let's go into it right now. Get out of debt. Now, this is the first thing you do. The first step is that you have to declare a moratorium on additional debt. In other words, I don't want to have debts anymore. And I'll add no more debt to the ones I have. Okay? Because if you don't get into debt, there is no way you can even be bankrupt. And you can, you live much better. Secondly, you make a covenant with God. You say, Lord, as you bless me with a bonus or with an increase, let me use it to decrease my debts. Set a target date for your debt and say, in the next 10 years, it may sound too far. In the next 10 years, I want to be debt-free from everything, whether it's a bond, whether it's a car. I don't want to be in debt. And I'll show you how you can do it quickly right now. Now, when you get the 13th check, it goes to where? It doesn't go to microwave oven, sisters. It doesn't go to the washing machine. It goes to the debts. This is how you go about doing it. You list your debts from the smallest to the highest. All right? We start with the bottom one, grocery store. Woolworths, 500 rand, 6 months. Now, somehow after you looked at your budget, you found another 500 rand that you could use. And you say, this 500 rand I have, plus the 500 rand I was paying for Woolworths. For this 6 months Woolworths account, I need to pay now 1,000 rand. It was 6 months, in 3 months it's gone. You have closed Woolworths. Now you have 1,000 rand. You check the departmental store. It's your Edgar's. There you pay 1,000 rand. You had it maybe for another year. You take that 1,000 rand that you used to pay here, plus the 1,000 rand here. It's 2,000 rand. In 6 months, Edgar's is gone. You've got 1,000 rand here and 1,000 rand here. You have a credit card where you are paying 2,000 rand per month. Now you have 1,000, 1,000 is 2, plus 2,000 is 4,000 rand. The credit card was also for 12 months. You paid 4,000 rand. Now, in 6 months, you don't have credit card, you don't have this thing, they are closed. Here it was 3 months, 6 months. It's 1 year. In 1 year, you don't have a credit card, you don't have departmental store or grocery store. Now you have furniture where you pay about, how much do you pay for furniture per month? For 24 months. 1,000 or 2,000? Okay, let's say 1,000. Is 1,000 is for 24 months. And I'll take it for 24 months. But you have 1,000, 1,000, 2,000 is 4, plus 1,000 is how much?
5.
It's 5. Now, this was 1,000 for 24 months. Now it's 5,000 for how many months? 4 months. Now, in 1 year, 4 months, you don't have furniture account and all this. Now you've got a car. How much do you pay for your car? 6,000 rand. Now, 6,000 rand you pay for your car. But you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And here? 6. How much is it? 11. Instead of what? 5. You pay 11 instead of 5. That was for how many years? Maybe, let's say you were left with 3 years. So you pay it in how many years? 1.5. So, in how many years did we come so far here? If you check. Because here it was 3 months, 3 months, 6 months, 6 months, 1 year, 1.5. Now, it's 1.5 until here. Now, when we get here, it was 3 years left, and now we pay double. So we are left with 1.5. So we haven't got to 5 years. We have paid off the car loan. We are left with the bond. How much do you pay for your bond? 5? 6? Okay, let's say 6,000. Now, how much do we have? You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You've got 11. 11 plus the 6 you pay for your bond. How much is it? 17. And then you were left with maybe, let's say 20 years. Now, you need to understand that in your bond, when you pay 6,000, possibly the one that reduces the capital could be how much? 2,000? Eh? Yeah, about 2,000, 3,000. So very little goes to the capital. The rest of it is interest. So if you pay 6,000, 4,000 is for interest, 2,000 could be for the capital. Actually, we are conservative, maybe even less than that. Now, you have 17,000 for a bond where you pay 6. And you still have 20 years. So how many years is it going to take you?
It's going to take you approximately 3.5 years to 4.
3.5 years to 4. She's right. Maximum 5 years. Now, 5. And up to here, we got up to 4 years. So you see, in 10 years, you are debt-free. Let me tell you, my wife and I gave these presentations for more than 20 years. We come across people who tell us, do you remember in 19 whatever, when you make this presentation, today I'm debt-free. I've paid off all my debts. I've paid off even my bond. I buy everything cash. Are we together? It works. We applied it to ourselves first about many years ago, 25 years ago or so. And it works. There is nothing I buy on account. I don't. Because I've gone through that process. So that everything I want to buy is what? Cash. And when I say cash, you can even get your car cash if you have no debts. Because you save. And when you save, you can do anything. But those who do not have cash, there is nothing wrong in borrowing, as long as the principles of borrowing are adhered to. Are we together? Borrow as little as possible and for not more than 7 years. This is what you should do if you don't have the discipline of the credit cards. There are a pair of scissors. You can go and buy one. They will be cheaper than the interest you pay for your debts. You know, these are some of the things you can do. Have a say. You know, in my community where I live, I've seen when missus, they give their domestic clothes to go and sell for them. And they get money for those. Those things that don't fit anymore because the figures are gone. You can either give them away or sell and make money out of them. Not to think that one day you'll get into that. It's not going to happen. You know, these are some of the things you can do. Yes. The principle of borrowing, borrow as little as possible, make payback time as short as possible, negotiate interest. Don't just go there and say, no, we give you prime plus 3. You say, no, it's fine. No, just say, why not prime? Actually, why not prime minus? Yes. Then you start there, then you can move maybe to prime, or at least prime plus 1. Or you can go to another bank. What can you do for me if I do A, B, C, D? No, we'll give you prime plus 1. Then you go back to your bank. If that bank I don't even bank with can give me prime plus 1, you should give me prime. Yes. Negotiate. Don't take things at face value. Have a fixed interest rate if you can, because fixed interest rate is a little bit higher than flexible, but at least you know, even if things change, whether Zuma goes or he doesn't go, the interest rates go up or not, you know what you pay. Are we together? Right. Be sure that there is no prepayment penalty. Sometimes, if your debt is for 20 years or 10 years and you pay it quicker, you may be penalized. Why do you pay us off before we milk you? So we penalize you for that. So check that there is nothing like that. Avoid surety. In simple terms, if you read those texts, Solomon says you are a damn fool if you are a guarantor for somebody else. Just go and read them for yourself. You are a what? Damn fool. Because if he stops paying, you pay. So that's not me, it's the Bible. Go and check it. Shop for the money, like I said, for interest rates. Don't just take things at face value. Negotiate to get better deals. Avoid these guys. They like having you. It's not good. It's not good for you. And those things we've spoken about, let me quickly take you through something quickly here. Here are two people who buy houses. The other one buys this one. He wants 100,000 rand house. And he goes for it. Put 10,000 deposit, 90,000 left. Interest rate is 12%. He pays 925.75 for 30 years. At the end of 30 years, that's what he's got. He paid 333,000 for that house of what? Of 100,000. But here's a smart guy. He says, you know what? I'll buy small, pay deposit of 10, and then pay it off in 7 years. This is what I'll be paying per month. In 7 years, I've paid 74,000. And then I take that 60,000 house, I make it as a deposit for this house. And put 60, and I'm left with 40. I paid for 7 years, and this is it. I will have paid 59,000. In 14 years, this man paid for that 100,000 house 133,000. That is 59 plus 74. 14 years. He doesn't owe anything on the house. The next 16 years, when this man is still paying for his bond, he saves the money, and at the end of 30 years for both of them, he's got over 500,000, 615,000. He's got nothing. 7 years, 7 years. Try to save money. Saving is important. There is something we call compound interest. Interest on interest. Albert Einstein says, compound interest is the 8th wonder of the world. He who understands it earns it. He who doesn't pays it. And then, you know, Warren Buffett, one of the richest men, says, my wealth has come from a combination of living in America, some lucky genes, and compound interest. This is how it works. If you put 5,000 rand per annum, and let's suppose you get 10%, compound interest, this is what you get. But with normal interest, that's what you will get. And then, here is something that is very interesting. You can read it for yourself. If you put 5,000 every year for 40 years, you will have put 200,000. If we suppose that you get this interest rate, in 40 years, you'll get 2.4 million. Now, I've seen young couples here. Now, if you put 5,000 rand per annum, I think everybody can do that. 5,000 kangwaha, not per month. So what more if you put double that? So you could have 4.8 in 40 years. So you retire with being a millionaire. So simple savings, nothing complicated. All right? I don't want to go, I can go into this, but I see I don't have time. Fundis, looks like my time is over. It's 4 o'clock. So one day, maybe you'll have to call me to talk about that. My wife talks very nicely about that. Okay?
He hideth my soul in the cleft of his rock, and he covers